Well, Rovers, we are underway again. This is our 8th day at sea. Now, yesterday was pretty much a washout. We hardly made any miles at all. And that was on account of the wind against current situation that we were in, which was really nasty. You know, having sailed a lot solo on small boats, crossed the ocean 3 times, and I can say that those seas yesterday were some of the worst I've been in. The camera doesn't really capture it because it's such a short lens. It's a waterproof camera, and you've probably seen them. They're little action cameras. They fit in your pocket. If you really want to catch wave height, you need a long lens, and I just don't have that equipment, certainly not waterproof. So you'll just have to take my word for it. They were big seas, like some of them were 5 meters, but it wasn't just the height, it was they were coming from 2 or 3 different directions because the wind had veered so quickly, and they were strong winds. You know, I had clocked a wind at 32 knots, and that was pretty steady, and they were, the forecast had said 35 knots, so we weren't too far from it. And this is at deck level that I'm taking this with a handheld anemometer, not a masthead, which undoubtedly would have given a much higher reading. So those were really strong conditions. Now, right now, we're looking at about well, maybe 3 meter seas, maybe a little higher. So they've calmed down quite a bit, and it's on account of the wind. The wind is now down to about 22 knots. I checked it this morning. We have a situation brewing. So we're right on the edge of a south-flowing current. It's a spur that comes off of the Gulf Stream, and we need to cross that. And it's about 20 miles wide. So we're doing what we can to fight these waves and the current. So it's a south-setting current. The current wants to push me south, but the wind is from the south. So because it's not 30 knots, it's only 20 plus knots, the seas are not that big. But the boat, I have it steering more northeast, but we're barely making east. And the current is setting me to the south, if you're following. So we need to get across this because tonight we're in for some more high winds from the south, which is going to make this particular spur quite dangerous. Well, I should choose my words carefully. It'll make it the very same as it was yesterday, which meant that I virtually had no headway, that we were in deploying our storm tactics. On that note, last night I did hove to, but on account of the wind and the current from 2 different directions, it was only about maybe 75-80% effective. So I shut it down after a couple of hours and just set sail again, which we really are just crawling when I set sail because we're fighting that current and the wind. But it did keep us on a starboard tack all night, which meant I could get some rest as opposed to the rolling we were getting when we were hove to. Anyway, that was a very long brief. Time to go below, I think, and have breakfast. Well, you'll never guess what today's meal is. Seafood omelet, and if you're new to the channel, what's in seafood omelet? Well, 3 eggs and a tin of mackerel and a tin of sardines. Then we put 5 drops of iodine on it just to fortify it, and a little bit of salt. And it is delicious. Oh, I forgot. And a tablespoon and a half of tallow. If you don't have tallow, use lard. If you don't have lard, use butter. Well, the shackle holding this safety line was just rattling and vibrating and making it hard to sleep, so it had to be removed. I realized that the sheets and other lines going forward to the mast, very safe to clip into if I should have to go up there, but for the most part, I never go up there. I seem to have an adventurous life. At least my adult life has been adventurous. From building a boat and sailing across the Pacific in the early days, to building a cabin in the wilderness and another cabin on a remote Gulf island. I don't start out saying, what's the most bizarre thing I can think of? Far from it. All of these things come to me honestly. They seem like the perfect fit. This is something I must do. I'm drawn to doing it. I listen to that little voice inside me when it speaks. And you really have to, because that little voice inside you will give you the best advice. Now, these adventures, they all require a plan. And that plan has to be complete. For example, if a ship were to leave harbor and just head out to sea without a destination in mind, the chances are it's going to end up on a reef eventually, because it didn't have a plan. Now that's pretty ridiculous. A ship would never do that. And yet, almost everybody I know lacks a plan. They lack a plan for the day, they lack a plan for the week, they lack a plan for the month. They certainly lack a plan for the year, or 5 years, or 10 years. I've always been a planner. I've always been someone who has a plan. Short-term plans and long-term plans. Plans that work together, that dovetail together to make a complete picture. So what makes a good plan? What makes a good plan for an adventurous life? Well, number one, whatever you're doing needs to be not just easy, it has to be hard. It has to be at the edge of your reach, just at the tip of your fingertips. You can just barely grasp it. Number two, you have to analyze, what do you need to get there? What skills do you need to acquire? What resources do you need to require? What support do you need? You have to get all this in place. You have to have a reasonable amount of time to accomplish these sub-goals, because if you don't put a time on it, you will never get those complete. You will have obstacles that will get in the way, especially if you don't pour your energy and passion into this. For example, it's so important to take care of your health. What you eat and how you exercise and how you sleep are all big parts of accomplishing your goal. They should be just forming part of the foundation of your plan, because so often plans are derailed by poor health, by a lack of resources, by a vision that has died over time, perhaps as a combination of all those other obstacles. But it's the completion of that plan, getting to that destination, that gives you such a feeling of accomplishment, such a feeling of fulfillment, of happiness. It's truly success. Planning has made all the difference in how successful I have been able to live my life. So the waves are definitely 2 meters, maybe 2 meters plus, so that would be a little over 6 feet. And the wind has increased closer to 25 knots, but we're doing fine. The problem is the seas are a little bit bigger than they should be under those circumstances, and that's because we're still battling wind against current, and we will be for another 10 miles if the model is correct, but you know, who knows. So we've got no choice really. We've got to get through this band of current to get to the other side. We're heading basically east, but we're also getting set to the south. Just the nature of the beast. Here's a quick little tutorial on AIS. So we have a ship right there, the MN Colibre, and they were on a collision course with us at about 20 miles. So at about 5 miles, they altered course, and I knew they altered course because I was watching them and I could see their course over the ground had changed. There's their speed, and then the range right now is 2.4 nautical miles. So when I saw that they had altered course, I knew I didn't have to hail them. But what was really nice is when they were at their closest point of approach, which was 1.6 nautical miles, they hailed me and just asked how everything was going, and we had a little chat. It was really nice and friendly. They're on their way to France, and I told them I was on my way to the Azores, and they wish me fair winds and following seas. Now let's go up on deck and we'll see if we can spot them. So we look out on the port quarter and all we see is water, but then in the distance we can just make out, we can't see it now, but there we go. We see a big MN on the side of the hull. Very nice indeed. It's easy to see right now that even though we're 1.8 miles, I disappear behind these waves. And so they would be unlikely to see my navigation lights. So that's why it's important to keep an eye on these vessels. And if they have an altered course by about 2 miles away from you, you might want to hail them on VHF and let them know where you are. That's been my action I've taken with any vessels. Well, the wind is back down to about 12 to 13 knots. The seas, they're still about 2 meters, but they're a whole lot more calm than they were over the last 48 hours. It's actually really pleasant again. Not that it wasn't during the heavy weather, it was just a different type of pleasant. Wave Rover certainly now has been tested in heavier weather. Bear in mind, she's a 21-foot boat. You know, generally boats this size are coastal cruisers at best, if not just racers or dinghies. So she's doing remarkably well as a blue water cruiser. Sail is up, let's take a look. but we're still looking at about 25% of the waves having white caps. Now, according to Seahawk, and that's the chap who's been helping me with the weather, I'm able to get texts of 160 characters, and he's been able to, you know, using shorthand, get messages to me a couple of times a day, trying to tell me where the current is and where the what the wind should be, so that I'm not surprised. And it now looks like I'm past the south setting Gulf Stream. I'm sort of in a no man's land. I'm making about 5 knots under sail and under full sail, and I should be entering, probably in the next 15 nautical miles, a north setting branch of the Gulf Stream. It's my intention just to pass straight over top of that. It's about 85 to 90 miles in width, so we'll just keep going east and pass right over that, because we do expect winds in the next 36 hours that will have an easterly component to them, and we don't want to end up in that almost like washing machine cycle that we were in over the last 36 hours. So that's the plan, and we're going to try to stick to it. Well, Rovers, I just came in from being on deck. It's blowing 18 from the southwest. The seas are, well, between 2 and 3 meters, and we should be just about to enter, probably in the next couple hours, the north setting Gulf Stream, and that should bring about a few changes, and we'll be seeing that in the next video. As always, Rovers, thanks for watching, and forge your own adventure. Well, we're still looking at about 25% of the waves. Take 2.